The psychology of light. The morning sun streams through your window, gently waking you with a warm glow that signals a new day. Later, the soft amber light of evening lamps creates an atmosphere of relaxation as your body prepares for rest. These experiences reflect a profound truth. Light represents far more than mere illumination. It functions as a powerful biological signal orchestrating bodily processes that directly influence your psychological state through pathways evolved over millions of years. Far beyond simply enabling vision, light shapes your inner experience through sophisticated neurobiological mechanisms that influence mood, energy, cognitive function, and sleep quality. This relationship runs deeper than personal preference. It flows through the very architecture of your biology, shaping the currents of your thoughts, emotions, and energy throughout each day's journey. This chapter explores the remarkable connection between light and psychological well-being, revealing how thoughtful light management can transform your daily experience. The biology of brightness, how light speaks to your body. The relationship between light and psychological state extends far deeper than aesthetic appreciation. Research reveals sophisticated biological pathways through which light directly influences brain function, hormone production, and nervous system activity, all of which collectively shape your mood, energy, and mental clarity. The rhythm keeper, light and your internal clock. At the heart of light's psychological influence lies what scientists call the circadian timing system, your body's internal clock that coordinates physiological processes according to 24-hour cycles. This remarkable system fundamentally shapes your psychological functioning by orchestrating hormonal fluctuations, neural activation patterns, and metabolic processes that collectively determine your energy, mood, and cognitive capacity throughout the day. The central conductor of this biological orchestra is a small region in your hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, which functions as your master biological timekeeper. This tiny cluster of approximately 20,000 neurons receives direct input from specialized photoreceptors in your eyes. Intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, IPRGCs, that are particularly sensitive to blue wavelength light, 460 to 480 nanometers, the predominant wavelength in morning daylight. Foster Hankins, 2007. When stimulated by this light, these cells send signals that help synchronize your internal clock with the external world. This system doesn't just determine when you feel sleepy, but orchestrates complex temporal patterns that profoundly shape your psychological state throughout the day. Different cognitive abilities, emotional sensitivities, and energy levels naturally rise and fall in these cycles, not as defects in your functioning, but as natural rhythms of your biological design. When light patterns align with these internal rhythms, you experience what chronobiologists call circadian coherence, a state where your internal biological patterns synchronize harmoniously with external time cues. Like a river flowing with the natural contours of the landscape rather than against them, this alignment allows your energy to flow more effortlessly through your day. Conversely, when light exposure patterns disrupt these rhythms, whether through insufficient morning light, excessive artificial light at night, or irregularly timed exposure, this synchrony breaks down. Research consistently shows that such circadian disruption correlates with increased risk of mood disorders, cognitive performance challenges, and elevated stress hormones. Legates et al., 2014. Your body essentially operates like an orchestra where different sections are playing from different sheet music, each instrument fine on its own but collectively creating discord rather than harmony. The timing of light exposure matters deeply in this rhythmic relationship. Morning light exposure, particularly within the first hour after waking, provides especially strong circadian entrainment benefits through its effects on cortisol and other awakening hormones. Terman, 2005. Evening exposure to blue wavelength light, especially from digital devices, can disrupt melatonin production necessary for healthy sleep onset. This timing-specific relationship reflects our evolutionary adaptation to natural light patterns, with morning's blue-rich light signaling day beginning and evening's amber hues communicating day ending to our biology. The mood messenger, light and your emotional landscape. Beyond its timekeeping role, light influences your psychological state through direct effects on neurotransmitter systems, the chemical messengers regulating mood, motivation, attention, and other fundamental aspects of your experience. Through these pathways, light literally shapes the chemical environment of your brain, creating either fertile or challenging conditions for emotional well-being. Serotonin, often associated with mood regulation and emotional balance, shows particularly strong relationships with light exposure. Research demonstrates that serotonin levels vary seasonally with day length, reaching their lowest points during winter months in high-latitude regions. Lambert et al., 2002. This fluctuation helps explain why some people experience seasonal mood changes with varying light exposure, while the effectiveness of bright light therapy for certain forms of depression further confirms this important relationship. Dopamine, associated with motivation, pleasure, and reward processing, similarly responds to light conditions. Research indicates that bright light exposure can influence dopamine release in the brain, potentially explaining why environments with inadequate light often correlate with reduced initiative and diminished experience of pleasure. Tsai et al., 2011. The light in your environment doesn't just help you see your goals. It may actually help fuel your motivation to pursue them. Even your brain's balance between excitement and calm shows sensitivity to light patterns. The neurotransmitters that regulate this delicate equilibrium respond to light exposure patterns, creating what neuroscientists describe as shifts in your brain's overall excitatory-inhibitory balance. These shifts influence everything from your attention capacity to your emotional resilience throughout the day. Like water that can either nourish or drown a garden depending on its amount and timing, light exposure can either support or disrupt these delicate neurochemical balances. The key lies not in maximizing light exposure, but in aligning it with your body's natural expectations and requirements, honoring the relationship between light and brain chemistry that evolved over countless generations before artificial lighting changed our luminous landscape. The sunshine vitamin, light, and nourishment. Light influences your psychological state through yet another essential pathway, facilitating vitamin D synthesis through a process requiring ultraviolet B radiation present in natural sunlight but absent from most artificial lighting. While classified as a vitamin, this compound functions more like a hormone, influencing numerous brain processes that directly affect psychological function. Research consistently shows relationships between vitamin D levels and multiple psychological measures, with deficiency correlating with higher rates of mood disorders even when controlling for other health and demographic factors. Anglin et al., 2013. This relationship makes intuitive sense when we recognize that vitamin D receptors appear throughout brain regions regulating mood and cognitive function, influencing processes essential to psychological well-being. This pathway helps explain why artificial lighting, despite providing adequate visual illumination and even appropriate circadian signals, doesn't fully replace the psychological benefits of natural sunlight. Most artificial light sources provide negligible UVB radiation, creating what researchers call illumination without insulation, visual brightness without the full-spectrum radiation that supports vitamin D synthesis and its associated psychological benefits. The quality of light, beyond mere brightness. While both natural and artificial light influence psychological state, research reveals significant differences in their effects, stemming from distinct spectral compositions, temporal patterns, and contextual associations that collectively create qualitative light differences beyond simple brightness measurements. Understanding these differences opens pathways toward more psychologically supportive light environments, regardless of practical constraints. Natural and artificial, the spectrum of difference. Perhaps the most significant distinction involves what physicists call spectral power distribution, the specific wavelength combination comprising light sources. Natural daylight contains a smooth, continuous spectrum with all visible wavelengths, represented in proportions that vary systematically with time of day, weather conditions, and seasonal factors. This spectral richness creates full-spectrum stimulation of both visual and non-visual photoreceptors. By contrast, most artificial light sources produce discontinuous spectra, with specific wavelength peaks and gaps determined by their underlying technology. Fluorescent lighting typically shows significant spikes in green and yellow wavelengths with relative deficiency in red and blue portions. LED lighting often demonstrates strong blue wavelength peaks with less even distribution across other portions. These spectral differences create situations where light sources appear visually similar while producing significantly different biological responses. These spectral considerations prove particularly important because your visual system and non-visual photoreceptors respond to different aspects of the light spectrum. Your visual perception might register adequate brightness, while your non-visual systems receive significantly different signals than they would under natural light, creating subtle discord between what your eyes see and what your body experiences. Beyond spectral composition, Natural and artificial light create fundamentally different temporal experiences. Natural daylight demonstrates continuous subtle variations in intensity, direction, color temperature, and spectral composition throughout the day, creating rich temporal signatures that provide information about time passage. By contrast, most artificial lighting provides static conditions with fixed brightness, direction, and spectral properties that remain unchanged for extended periods, eliminating the environmental time cues that naturally support psychological orientation within daily cycles. Even the context and associations surrounding different light sources influence their psychological effects. Natural light carries strong associations with outdoor environments, typically involving greater environmental choice, reduced performance pressure, expanded physical boundaries, and connection to larger systems. These associations facilitate psychological openness, creativity, and reduced vigilance independently from the direct biological effects of the light itself. Artificial lighting, by contrast, often carries associations with institutional control, performance expectations, temporal rigidity, and separation from natural systems. The temperature of light. Cool, clarity, and warm connection. Among light's most psychologically influential characteristics is what lighting scientists call color temperature, the perceived warmth or coolness of light measured on the Kelvin-K scale. This property profoundly shapes psychological experience through both biological pathways and learned associations that collectively influence mood, cognitive function, and social behavior in consistent patterns. Light with higher color temperatures, 5,000–6,500 K, creates a cooler blue-white illumination resembling clear morning daylight. This lighting quality consistently demonstrates specific psychological effects, supporting alertness, cognitive performance, and detail-oriented thinking through both direct biological pathways and learned associations. Research consistently shows that cooler light temperatures enhance performance on tasks requiring sustained attention, working memory, and information processing speed compared to warmer alternatives at identical brightness levels. Hawes et al., 2012. The psychological effects of cool light extend beyond simple alertness to influence specific cognitive processes. Environments with cooler lighting appear to support better analytical thinking, more accurate detail perception, enhanced fact-based decision-making, and improved critical evaluation. These effects appear particularly pronounced for tasks involving visual discrimination, pattern recognition, and error detection, creating what cognitive scientists call an analytical processing bias that emphasizes systematic evaluation over intuitive approaches. At the other end of the spectrum, light with lower color temperatures, 2,700 to 3,000 K, creates warm amber osage, yellow tones resembling firelight and sunset, producing distinctly different psychological effects that support relaxation, social connection, and emotional processing. Research demonstrates that warmer light temperatures reliably reduce physiological arousal markers, including blood pressure, muscle tension, and stress hormones, compared to cooler alternatives at identical brightness levels. Choi-suk, 2016. The psychological effects of warm light extend beyond physical relaxation to influence social and emotional dimensions. Environments with warmer lighting foster greater interpersonal warmth, enhanced disclosure comfort, more positive evaluation of others, and higher reported conversation satisfaction compared to identical settings with cooler illumination. These effects appear particularly significant for activities involving relationship building, personal sharing, or emotional support, creating what social psychologists call psychological safety signals that reduce social vigilance and enhance openness to connection. While these general patterns remain consistent, their optimal application depends significantly on timing, context, and individual factors. Time of day represents perhaps the most significant modifier, with cooler temperatures producing strongest positive effects during morning and early afternoon when they match natural daylight patterns, while showing diminishing or even negative effects during evening hours when they contradict natural light progression towards warmer sunset and firelight conditions. Creating your light landscape. From awareness to action, understanding light's psychological effects provides foundation for creating environments that actively support, rather than inadvertently undermine psychological well-being through more intentional light management. While specific applications vary across contexts, several evidence-based principles consistently enhance light's psychological benefits while minimizing potential negative effects. The daylight difference. Maximizing nature's gift. Maximizing appropriate natural light exposure represents the single most effective lighting intervention for psychological well-being, with research consistently demonstrating superior outcomes in environments prioritizing daylight as primary illumination source. This approach recognizes that natural light provides comprehensive biological benefits difficult to replicate through even the most sophisticated artificial alternatives. Effective daylight optimization involves much more than simply adding windows. It requires thoughtful consideration of how natural light enters, distributes, and interacts within spaces. Light penetration depth significantly influences psychological benefits, with daylight reaching deeper into spaces creating more equitable distribution of well-being effects. Glare management proves equally important, as uncontrolled brightness can undermine daylight's psychological benefits through visual discomfort. Temporal optimization recognizes that daylight's psychological benefits vary throughout daily and seasonal cycles, requiring adaptive management rather than static approaches. Morning daylight exposure provides particularly strong mood benefits through circadian regulation pathways, while midday illumination supports optimal cognitive performance and afternoon exposure requires more careful management to prevent potential glare issues as sun angles lower. The experience of personal control over daylight conditions significantly enhances its psychological benefits independently from objective light measurements. Environments providing occupant adjustment options, whether through operable shading, workspace orientation flexibility, or activity location choices, show higher satisfaction ratings and stronger well-being correlations than environments with identical daylight metrics but limited control opportunities. Practical strategies for maximizing daylight benefits include: position primary living and working areas near windows when possible. Use light-colored, reflective surfaces to bounce daylight deeper into spaces. Install mirrors strategically to redirect natural light to darker areas. Keep windows clean and remove unnecessary obstructions that block light. Use sheer window coverings that filter rather than block daylight when privacy is needed. Schedule important activities during periods of optimal natural light availability. Spend time outdoors daily, especially during morning hours when circadian benefits are strongest. The artificial advantage, making technology work for you. While prioritizing natural light whenever possible, most environments require supplemental artificial lighting that can either support or undermine psychological well-being, depending on its implementation. Several key principles consistently associate with psychologically supportive artificial lighting regardless of specific technological approaches. Spectral quality significantly influences psychological outcomes, with measurable benefits from light sources providing balanced spectral distribution without significant gaps or extreme peaks. This consideration becomes particularly important for evening lighting, with research showing that reducing blue wavelength content after sunset significantly improves subsequent sleep quality by supporting natural melatonin production. Light distribution quality influences both visual comfort and psychological response through the three-dimensional pattern of brightness relationships within environments. Spaces with appropriate variation, neither excessively uniform nor dramatically contrasting, create better psychological outcomes than environments with either flat illumination attempting equal brightness everywhere or excessive contrast creating visual adaptation challenges. Temporal considerations prove increasingly important as research reveals significant benefits from circadian supportive lighting, artificial systems intentionally supporting rather than disrupting natural temporal rhythms. Dynamic systems gradually shifting from cooler, brighter daytime settings to warmer, dimmer evening conditions produce better sleep quality, reduced nighttime awakenings, and improved daytime alertness compared to conventional static systems. Control systems significantly determine whether technical lighting quality translates to actual psychological benefits. Environments providing intuitive control options aligned with psychological needs demonstrate better outcomes than technically superior systems with poor interface design. The most psychologically supportive approaches offer scenario-based options reflecting common needs, settings supporting concentration, collaboration, relaxation, energy enhancement, rather than requiring adjustment of abstract technical parameters. Practical implementation strategies include: install full-spectrum LED bulbs that more closely approximate natural light. Use adjustable color temperature lighting systems that can shift from cooler daytime to warmer evening settings. Layer lighting with ambient, task, and accent sources rather than relying solely on overhead illumination. Install dimmer switches to adjust light intensity according to changing needs throughout the day. Set up task lighting for detail-oriented activities rather than increasing overall room brightness. Use warmer 2700 3000K lighting in relaxation and social areas and cooler 4000 5000K lighting in work and task-focused spaces. Place light sources at varied heights to create more natural light distribution patterns. Consider smart lighting systems that automatically adjust color temperature based on time of day. Light therapy for seasonal and mood support. For those experiencing seasonal mood changes or circadian rhythm disruptions, light therapy provides a research-supported intervention that can significantly improve psychological well-being. This approach uses specially designed light devices that deliver specific intensity, spectrum, and timing of light exposure to address various psychological needs. Light therapy for seasonal affective disorder, SAD, typically involves morning exposure to bright light, 10,000 lux, for 30 to 40 minutes when using higher output devices, or 60-90 minutes with lower output alternatives, Terman 2005. This intervention has demonstrated efficacy comparable to antidepressant medication for seasonal depression in multiple clinical trials, with fewer side effects for most users. The timing of light therapy proves crucial for optimal benefits, with morning exposure, typically within 1-2 hours of waking, showing strongest effects for most people with seasonal mood changes or delayed sleep phase issues. However, individual circadian typology, whether someone is naturally a morning person or evening person, may influence optimal timing, with some evening-oriented individuals potentially benefiting from midday rather than early morning exposure. Beyond seasonal depression, therapeutic light exposure shows promising results for non-seasonal depression, sleep disorders, jet lag management, shift work adaptation, and attention regulation. These applications highlight light's fundamental role in regulating not just circadian rhythms but broader aspects of psychological functioning. Implementation considerations include: choose light therapy devices specifically designed for therapeutic purposes rather than general lighting products. Position light therapy devices at the manufacturer's recommended distance, typically 12 to 24 inches. Use light therapy while engaged in normal morning activities rather than staring directly at the light source. Maintain consistency in daily timing of light therapy sessions for optimal benefits. Begin with shorter durations, 10-15 minutes, and gradually increase as needed to avoid potential side effects. Consult healthcare providers regarding light therapy if taking photosensitizing medications or having eye conditions. Illuminating life. The larger journey. The journey toward more psychologically supportive light environments represents not just personal improvement opportunity, but potential collective shift in how we understand and manage one of our most fundamental yet frequently overlooked environmental influences. By recognizing light as essential psychological nutrient rather than merely functional utility, we open possibilities for environments that genuinely support human flourishing through more conscious alignment with our biological and psychological needs. Beyond physical illumination, light serves as powerful metaphor for consciousness itself, the awareness that allows us to perceive not just our surroundings but our relationship with them. Like the dawn that gradually reveals landscape features concealed by night, this growing consciousness progressively unveils how profoundly your surroundings shape your inner landscape. What changes when you recognize light not as passive background element, but as active participant in your psychological well-being? How might this recognition transform not just your environment, but your relationship with it? These questions invite ongoing exploration rather than definitive answers. Continuous dialogue between your evolving understanding and expanding experience that illuminates new possibilities with each cycle of awareness. The light that fills your external world eventually becomes the light filling your inner experience, either supporting or hindering your journey toward greater well-being, creativity, and connection. By bringing conscious awareness to this relationship, you transform from passive recipient to active participant, creating environments that don't merely surround you, but truly support you, illuminating your path toward more vibrant experience one conscious choice at a time.